Welcome to the Business Grind, where we give you an inside perspective on what it takes to start, build, and run a successful business. Here are your hosts, Danny Shaw and Sean Michael Wellington.
All right. Hello to everyone in podcast land today. Thanks for joining us. Sean, how you feeling?
Feeling good and ready to get into another book review. It's been a little bit since we've done one.
Yeah, we don't read anymore. It's all just
It's
videos.
been movie watching and
movie watching.
Yeah.
What you trying to read? Trying to get some knowledge? All right. Yeah. So on today's episode, we're going to discuss the book Beating the Odds. Eddie Brown's Investing in Life Strategies. Right. So we're going to get into that. As usual, share our thoughts on the book, the content. And how we can apply it to our own regular business endeavors and aspirations. Right. All right. So we're going to get into who Eddie Brown is. We're going to get into the book. We're going to get into some of the nuggets and lessons. But I think first out the gate, Sean, did you like it or no?
So it was okay. I did not dislike it.
Okay.
It was very similar in tone to one of the book reviews we did a couple episodes back. Watch the White Guys Have All the Fun. Felt like it was very similar in tone to me. And then when I went and looked, I think it was like the same publisher or editor or something. So I was like, oh, no wonder it felt that way to me. And that one I didn't really care for as much. I like this one a lot better.
Okay.
Because I think I went into it. The title kind of let you know that it was a mix of like biographical information and business philosophy. So I think I kind of knew what to expect a little better with this.
Got it. Okay. So that's a good point. It's definitely, I don't think I realized it was the same publisher. So I didn't realize it was Why Guys Have All the Fun. And this book was published by the same company. So they might be looking for a certain type of author when it comes to these type of books,
Right.
But yeah, I enjoyed the book. I liked it. It definitely was in that same vein. I will say this one felt like an easier read to me than Why Guys Have All the Fun. But
I completely agree. Yeah, it flowed a lot seamlessly between lesson and story. I felt like a lot more seamlessly than Watch Your White Guys Have All the Fun.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And this is my second or third time reading the book. Before I read it the first time I read it was in print format. Second time, or the third time was in audiobook format. And I will say my experience each time I read it also gave me a different perspective on my review of the book, which I'll get into in a bit.
Now, did the audio book have his voice, or was it like a narrator?
It was a narrator. I'm pretty sure it was a narrator because I was looking in the credits to see. And I didn't usually they're listed as if they're doing the voice or there's an announcement in the beginning. I didn't hear that this time around. So yeah.
Okay, I mean that's just a personal preference. I love it when it's like the author's own voice, but right. I get how that's not feasible all the time. So.
Right, and I will say I'm now, especially with AI, I think now they can get the likeness of the author like in their voice and have the computer do the narration. That's not the case here, but I can definitely see that happen with a lot of audiobooks moving forward.
That sounds like a future episode.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I guess first let's just get into Eddie Brown and who he is. We haven't really even talked about him and the author of this book, right?
Yeah. So he's the head of a capital management firm. Mm-hmm. He's a black man born in Baltimore. He grew up, during the Jim Crow era, in a lot of poverty, right?
Mm-hmm. Poverty, like Jim Crow type poverty, right? Born to a 13-year-old unwed mother. He was actually born in Florida, but later on, his base was in Baltimore. He was raised because his mother was so young and had him. He was raised mostly by his grandparents, and he was influenced by his mother's older brother, who was with the grandparents, right? So his uncle was, outside in the streets, a moonshiner running multiple businesses, so to speak, during that time, moonshine and other endeavors and activities. And Eddie Brown
was taken along for the ride during that time, driving cars at like 6 years old, 7 years old, running moonshine with his uncle, and getting his entrepreneurial spirit sparked up at a young early age, right?
Yeah, not driving just regular cars too. These were like souped up cars that were like built to evade the police and stuff. And he's driving them at like as a teenager. So.
Yeah. And so, early on he speaks to like his deep love for his grandparents and his uncle and just all of those elements and environments that contribute to who he is today. And then I think his life took a considerable major shift was when his grandmother passed away during a road trip. So he was on a road trip with his uncle and his grandmother, and his grandmother passed away from a heart attack, on that road trip, and they had to come back home, and then obviously life wasn't really the same for him after that. From there, he moved back with his mother, and they moved to Pennsylvania, I believe. And
Allentown. I think Allentown. They said it's the third largest city in Pennsylvania. I'm assuming Pittsburgh and Philly are the other two.
So when he moved back to Pennsylvania with the family, he was with his mother again, and he described like that time it was kind of, I don't want to, maybe weird or just not what he was used to, since he was raised by his grandparents, but he definitely was. He gave props to his mother for essentially being so involved in his education and making sure that he got a sound education and make sure that he wouldn't be taking certain classes that she didn't feel was appropriate for him and so forth.
It's funny because he talks about how education was a big part of his upbringing, but also that entrepreneurial side of it from his uncle. So he was really he says it himself in the book, he would go, he'd go get straight A's, and then after school, he's running from the cops doing moonshine and activities, you know what I mean? So,
balance, basically.
Right.
A little bit of balance.
It's true. And then I think, going back to what you're saying about his grandmother, when she died, it kind of threw off the balance a little bit at first, the way he talked about it.
Yeah. She was, and rightfully so, right? That's like the pillar and foundation of the family structure and dynamic. So when that gets removed, obviously a vacuum, gets created and things gotta, what takes that place, right? So during his academics, he graduated high school at 16 and found his way to essentially Howard University. And that was the only college he had heard of. So that's why he only applied there. Nowadays you hear stories about how people apply to hundreds of colleges and get accepted to all. And you see them stories, right, Sean? Right?
Sure, yeah. I got all 50 I applied to. I'm dating myself probably, but in my day, it was you had your zone, your safety, and your target.
Exactly. And so that was actually me. I think I applied to like 4 colleges. I had the one I wanted to, I had the backup one, and not to sidetrack from the story, I was accepted to my college before I applied in high school at the time. So I think even though I was accepted, until I saw the paperwork, I still was like, I don't trust it. So I still started applying to other stuff. But nowadays they have those, people got a laundry list of colleges they apply to. So Eddie Brown only applied to one because that was all he heard of, and it was Howard. That wasn't a bad. If he was only going to hear of one college, Howard wasn't the worst one to hear of to apply to, right?
Yeah.
And then he lucked out as well. He also got lucky. He had his tuition, room, and board were paid for by a mysterious donor, right? So he also lucked out there. He didn't apply for scholarships, but through the luck of his network and connections, he knew someone in the neighborhood who told them that there was a white lady who would like to help Black students go to college, and basically through word of mouth, and he didn't know if it was a real offer or not, if it was really going to happen, but it came through, and he never got to meet the person who would write the check. So essentially he just had a lady who would write checks for his room and board every semester, and it would be paid, and he had no connection, no insight, didn't know who it was, and never found out who it was. He said he never looked her up, initially, and by the time he did look her up or had the sense to look her up, he wasn't able to find her. So he was able to get full college tuition paid for by this mysterious donor.
Right. Honestly, I kind of downplayed it in the beginning, but as you go through the story, I'm just remembering how much I really enjoyed like some of the storytelling. It reminded me of Great Expectations, at least that aspect of it. Like you have the mysterious benefactor who's getting you to this next level of society. So that mixed with the moonshine, and I was like, some of this could be a movie. But
I feel like I feel like you do this all the time, Shaw. Like every time you start off like, nah, I wasn't feeling it. Then eventually it's like, actually, I think I did enjoy this more than I thought I did.
This is definitely not the first time I'll say that.
All right, so then all right, he went to Howard, electrical engineering degree, and then slowly started just transitioning to more of the business side of things. Also, can't dismiss, he also did serve time in the Army, right? So he was like checking off a lot of boxes, serving the country, getting his education, getting his master's, getting, a nice career in the job, and really just setting himself up for what we would assume is a pretty comfy middle-class American lifestyle, even at that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, while at IBM, it was a very comfortable and promising, outlook looking for him. But, as with a lot of people who have multiple interests and spirits, he definitely had an itch for business and wealth management as a whole, right? And then from there started really, I guess, how could we say, Sean, dealing with the fork in the road dilemma on like which way should he go and pursue, which way should he, direct his career and future, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, in my notes here, I kind of have it that rejection caused him to get his MBA. Like that's what pushed him in that direction.
And I mean, you want to speak more to that rejection?
I mean, no. I just think it was interesting because just the story overall. He's talking about how he got lucky. He's been set up for this, been set up for that, learned this and that. And now this was kind of the first time where, it's not an L per se, but it, it definitely it gives a fork in the road. I think that's the best way you put it. So
right. And that was for a position at the company, right?
Yeah, for a promotion, I believe.
Yeah, so actually that is a good insight. Up until then, I'm not going to say everything was a cakewalk, but it wasn't like he had a ton of L's, right? And even this L that we, wasn't truly an L. It was just like, nah, we're going in a different direction. And I think for him, it was like, all right, well, what can I do to ensure that doesn't really happen again, right?
Right.
And then we also got to speak to during that time in his life, or throughout his journey for the most part, he had his girlfriend and who ultimately became, his wife and partner. She was with him throughout his journey as well through these companies that he was working at, IBM, and his educational journey, and then the constant traveling and relocating, right, throughout his career. So he
he definitely credits her for like holding the household down while he was like studying for and getting his MBA and stuff, and how she was just like a real support system there.
So that's the part that kind of gets me in the book. Well, there's a lot of parts that gets me in this book, and I think the way he describes his relationship with his wife, it's very, I guess the best way I could say is sitcom-ish, right? Like, I guess in today's era, we're so used to hearing about so much scandal and drama and fighting and things behind the scenes with relationships and so forth. And reading this book, even the stuff that they would argue about, I just recall thinking to myself, oh, that's nothing, right? Like, this is light work. This is the biggest issue you had, right? Not to be dismissive, like, oh, it isn't really an issue at all, but it did feel very like, oh, this is cute. I'm sure they'll get over it. They'll get through it, right? Like, this isn't gonna destabilize the whole marriage and institution that they're working towards. Did you get that sense?
Yeah, totally. I definitely agree. It was that felt like one of the most, I mean, everything felt stable. I'm not saying anything was unstable in his life, but there was forks in the road, like you said, and he made choices and took career trajectories a little different from where he started, but I think like his relationship was pretty much, on the same track, just as everything evolved around him. So
right. So that's a good point you make about the stability of stuff. That I didn't think about that, but I did get that sense throughout the book and throughout his story. Because he went from IBM. He's been at a few well-known companies, and then he's gotten his education at well-known institutions and prestigious institutions. And it's not to say they weren't struggles and challenges along the way, but a lot of the moves definitely felt like stable, calculated risk type moves.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't like, man, we're betting the house on this move. It's like, all right, let's see where this takes us.
Right. Yeah. It definitely didn't feel like the stories, especially a lot of these stories that we hear nowadays, they were down to their last luck and then they just finally got a home run and changed their whole fortune in life. It feels like, Eddie Brown's trajectory was very steady.
100%, and I don't want to go on too much of a tangent about something else, but just how you described it, how like that last home run that got us through. I feel like these stories and these movies specifically are kind of forcing those narratives now,
right?
And I'm specifically calling out Air. I don't know if you saw it, and I don't know if you had plans to do a future episode on Air, but I felt like they kind of forced drama that didn't exist. But
oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it.
Okay, no, we'll chop it up behind the scenes, see if that warrants a future episode.
Yeah, maybe. But back to your point though, yes, I do feel like he had he made calculated decisions and calculated risks, but nothing was like this is all or nothing.
Which I really appreciate. I kind of feel like that's more my style. I'm more of a calculated risk type person. I'm not necessarily. I don't want to be down to my last and hope that this last deal goes through or I'm ruined, right? So I appreciated that. I do know that probably doesn't make for the most exciting book and the most exciting story. Like, oh, this guy made this calculated move and it paid off, and the next calculated move and it paid off. Sometimes people do, we like those extremities sometimes in our stories, right?
Yeah, as a public, as a people, we like that stuff, but this is a realistic take on, this is a realistic story, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate like the overall principle, I think, of this whole book. Like when we get to we're talking about the bio, but when we discuss the investment strategy side of it, his overall principle was patience in investing. Right. So with someone with that kind of mentality, it's gonna make sense, and it makes sense with the whole narrative, though, that he's taking calculated risks. So,
and I will say, I think that comes. That also his strategy has a lot to do with his upbringing, like the transition from the bottom, literally, right, to becoming, asset manager worth over $17 billion, right? His company manages a ton of money. You won't get to that point making wheeling and dealing type deals and crazy reckless moves all the time, right? Similar to Warren Buffett, who everybody attributes as like the greatest investor. It's a very similar approach where it's slow and steady, and it doesn't necessarily make for the most exciting story to people who need that, but it is a good story on just how patience and sticking to the plan does pay off in the end.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't want to stay too long into his work history before he started his own firm, but I think there's a few areas that kind of stood out to me about his story during his employment days. One was, being the only Black person in these traditionally white establishments, and in one particular instance, seeing the KKK have a parade outside his office one day while he was at work, right?
Wow.
That's wild to me. That's just wild to me. Like, obviously we know it exists, we know the realities of the world, but when he tells that story, even then, this is what kind of made me laugh again. Even with a story like that, the way he described it, it felt very sitcom-ish, right? Like I'm like, sir, I don't think I would be as flippant as you are with telling this story, right? Like to see that happen outside of your building, and then to have, the other, I think it was one other black person who actually was one of the reasons why he decided to join the company at the time, come in and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That has never happened in all my years working at this company. I've never seen that, like, coming right down the block," right?
Yeah. But he was very nonchalant.
He was very nonchalant. I'm like, sir, like, this is an area where I think you can afford to not be so nonchalant about this, right? And then other instances where it wasn't really anything bad. I think for me, it just really gave more insight into that corporate world. It's not just about if you're qualified. It also is about your personality, how you mesh with other people. He talks a lot about, outside of just, do I want the job, or is it a good job, and if they're compensating me well. It's also about, do we like this neighborhood? Do we like the people that we're having dinner with? I'm gonna have to be working with those people, right? And taking all of that into account, which I don't think is a lot of people may be tuned into that frequency when thinking about their career or their path, right? So those are little things that I picked up on throughout the book while he was working at these companies.
What did you think during that same time period, but not related specifically to one of the companies he was working for? Mm-hmm. What did you think of him and his I don't want to say fixation, but he was dedicated on helping his daughter with her speech problem. That was just like a little mini story he told, and I thought it stood out to me for some reason because it just stood out to me. I don't know what you thought of it actually.
Actually didn't resonate that well to me. I think what I got from him and majority of his stories is that he has a general positive outlook on things, and whatever may come across as a problem, or what most people would consider a problem, he would just try to figure out how to go about fixing it and solving it in his manner. His manner was very, very calming and very soothing. It's like, we'll get through it. And by the grace of this, we were able to do this. And by the grace of that. So by the time he was talking about that story with his daughter, and honestly, it just felt like more of another problem that he just calmly passed by, right? We calmly helped to fix, quote unquote, fix and so forth, or resolve. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Because I didn't think of it. Okay, reading it first, I'm like, wow, we kind of brushed past that kind of fast. So it was almost another footnote, right? Like the KKK thing,
right?
And I'm like, wow, you would think, like, if you're watching the movie Creed, that's a whole sub story, right? So I'm thinking, wow, I wonder why. I mean, different Creed was her hearing, not speech, but you get my drift.
I get your drift, yeah.
But I'm just saying, I wonder why he didn't focus more time on discussing that story and that struggle and overcoming that. And now that you put it in perspective, it is kind of just his mentality with everything. It's like, there's a problem, I found a solution, and I moved on. So he told the story that way.
Right. And that's how he told that story. So yeah, it just felt like more of the same from Mr. Eddie Brown, just solving more problems as calmly as he does. You know what I mean? So let's just transition a little bit. I know we're a little pressed for time. Into the, starting his own business, right?
So what I think was interesting about his businesses is that it survived through the dot-com bust, 9/11, the Great Recession, through those eras. Yeah. He's been an entrepreneur. Right. I love that.
Right. That's a testament to his business and his principles and, his strategy for investing, right? Like, a lot of companies would not have not been able to survive those three major financial incidents in history, right? And he was able to. But also, the way he started his own business was pretty much in line with his calculated risk strategy, right? Like, when he left, he didn't just say, I'm out tomorrow, you can kiss my ass. he had his savings. He had his savings in order. He knew how much runway he had with his capital before he would, have to run out of money for his business. He speaks to how he kept his costs low by, starting the business in his house, right? He didn't go and excuse me, rent expensive office space to impress folks and things like that. He also talked about how he managed his health insurance for him and his wife and family during that time. And, it was very, again, very calculated, very like, hey, we have a few layers of protection so that we're not just out here looking crazy, especially after all that he has accomplished. I could see why you wouldn't want to just throw that down the drain, right?
Definitely not. Yeah, you want to build from where you are.
Right. That great. Oh, great phrase. Build from where you are, and that's what he did. And it was very, at least for my sensibilities and how I like to move, makes sense, right? Like a lot of times, especially early on, business entrepreneurs think that if they're not looking the part, then they're not really doing business, right? If I don't have a laptop and I'm not at a certain place where all these other entrepreneurs are working at and doing stuff, am I really in the game, right? And for him, he's like, I'm in the game. I'm just in the game from home, and I'm gonna get my clients and do what I do and build from there. I know a lot of times we talk about bootstrapping business more on the tech side of things when people are trying to start their online business or tech startup or whatever, but it applies to all aspects, all industries of business, as we see here. And especially, I think it's interesting, when you think finance, you don't usually think that, right? Like finance and investments, it's more presented as glorious and luxurious, unless you're like doing like boiler room investing in penny stocks and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but usually it's from a place of like, elevated like lifestyle and luxury, and you wearing a suit and you going into these business deals. Right. And he was still going into those deals and those meetings, but he didn't need to do the peripheral stuff.
Right. Indeed. All right, so you want to get into his strategies? You mentioned like his investment strategies prior.
Well, I just think he did long-term plays, so it was it wasn't any I struck gold on this particular investment. He just really advocated for long-term plays.
Yeah, and it's funny when you think about that, investing for long-term plays and strategies, especially when we're in a world, I think now, where a lot of companies don't even have the luxury of thinking super long-term. Right, a lot of companies.
Is it a luxury though? Like,
I think it is. Okay. Tell me your thoughts.
I just feel like I guess what we do, we could split hairs on what we just talk. This is what we consider long term, but right, you gotta think like 5-7 years down the road, right? Like,
I don't disagree and say you shouldn't think 5-7 years down the road, but I will say, I don't think that's the world we're in, and I don't think a lot of companies have the luxury of thinking 5-7 years down the road. In order to be in that position to think 5-7 years down the road, depending on your business, there's a few things that will have to be in order. One would have to be, your cash flow, your operating expenses, all of that stuff would kind of have to be accounted for, and you would also have to take into all potential risks during that time, right? Which Eddie Brown was doing from an investment perspective, but I don't think a lot of business have that luxury. When you think about, look at how business is even promoted nowadays, move fast and break stuff. Like, that's a legit term that so many people adopt for their business. Move fast and break stuff. Well, you move fast and break stuff, how are you going to really be able to truly plan 5 to 7 years from now? Right?
That's definitely the Silicon Valley model. It was at one point.
Right. And then also, you think about a lot of times companies, they are beholden to their shareholders. And in that case, you're really moving on a quarter-to-quarter basis then. Because when you report earnings and you report, your financials to the company, you got to hope that you beat the estimates for that quarter, right? In order for the shareholders to be satisfied, and management and the board, and so you don't get kicked out. I'm not saying there's companies who don't do that nowadays. There are still a lot of companies that do that, do long-term planning 5 to 7 years. I'm just saying a lot of companies don't have the luxury of being able to do that because they have to deliver results now. So
right, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So, and he even was under the gun at a certain point. It was one of the crashes, was it one of the crash in the 80s? I think he mentioned, where stocks was tumbling, falling, and his phone was ringing off the hook, and all of his clients was like, "Listen, get me out now, sell, sell, sell." So it's not like he never came under fire or had the same pressure of delivering right then and there, but because he was so strong in his conviction to his long-term strategy, it did pay off in the end. With that being said, now, Sean, do you have a 5 to 7 year strategy for your business?
I mean, I do, but
okay.
But I don't have any shareholders to adhere to, so
Fair enough. That's fair. That's totally fair. So I did want to speak to the philanthropy effort and the charitable giving and stuff like that. One thing about Eddie Brown, one, as we've already saw from his life story, he definitely benefited from people paying it forward and being charitable and giving back, right, in some way. So whether it was in college, the lady who paid his tuition, who he never got to meet, to even his job and career, and getting certain breaks and certain opportunities because people said, hey, we're gonna try things a little different, and here's an opportunity. So he's always been big on like giving back, and he's been very instrumental in donating millions of dollars over the years to programs for education and arts, for all people, but especially African American communities for sure. He has multiple funds, Baltimore Museum of Arts, libraries in Baltimore, scholar programs. Like, he's very entrenched in the philanthropy community, which for me, it's very noteworthy and commendable, but I also think it just speaks more to him having that sense of, I made it, let me give back, instead of a approach of, I'm self-made and I did all of this on my own.
What I liked about it was that he had a conscious approach of, let me be proactive in this, let me not just write a check and
right,
let it do what it does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna make sure I'm involved in my philanthropy. So I like that about it.
Right, for sure. That as well. So yeah. So overall, just a very well rounded life and career and career and business journey. That's very definitely appreciated the story, and even his strategies, his investing in just strategies on career and education as well.
Yeah, and what we didn't really talk too much about. We could kind of I get your opinion on his media financial celebrity status. Like, he had a whole chapter, like, aren't you that guy from TV, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he had a little fame in the game from the financial side of things. He was a panelist on a weekly financial show on PBS in his town, and people would start recognizing him because I think he was the only black guy on the show, right? So
right, yeah, he was the only black guy on TV talking money. So
yeah,
he stood out.
Talking shmoney gang, baby. So people was definitely recognizing him on the street, and he getting a little fame out here, which is always funny. I think it's always interesting to see people who have fame in a specific industry that's not music or entertainment related. It's just always interesting because we usually associate the fame with just entertainment and music. So then when you see a person getting run down by other folks for something that you have no idea what's happening, it's always like a odd scene, I think.
Yeah, like your favorite cinematographer or whatever.
Right.
No one else has heard of.
That's my favorite key grip. I see all his movies or something like that. Right. No, definitely a good point there. I did want to speak to his educational choices. All right.
By that you mean like which degrees he chose to get and stuff like that?
Yeah. I think for me, it just everything felt complimentary.
Not essential, right?
No, complimentary. Like each degree complemented each other.
Oh, okay. I thought you. Okay. Yeah. Sure. I thought we were going was that he could have still done everything he did without some of those degrees. But I see what you're saying.
I mean, he possibly could. Listen, I'm going off on a quick tangent. There's no doubt that, when you look at his character and see how he approached life and how he approached the game and the career, for me, there's no doubt that he could have done all of this without degrees if he really wanted to. That's fine. I'm not of the college is a scam perspective though. I think it depends, right? I'm very big on it depends on what you're trying to do and what direction you want to go, and then seeing if college is appropriate for you. So for me, seeing him get that education, it was fine. I wasn't like, oh man, you wasting your time. But what I will say is that I do think the degrees that he got complemented each other for where it placed him later on in life. Like the industrial degree, then he got his master's, and I think there was another degree. I think he got
there was a PhD in there mentioned. They mentioned the PhD because at one point he was the company was going to pay for it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I believe there was 2 masters as well as as his bachelor's, but each, even from just the bachelor's and the business degree, those two I think are very complementary. You're an engineer and finance and business, like that. It complements each other. So even then, maybe he didn't realize it, or maybe he did. It kind of feels like a subconscious move that's part of his overall personality of just taking calculated risks. All right. So with all that being said, Sean, do you still think it's an okay book, or have you changed your opinion on it?
All right, I'm gonna increase my opinion a little bit. I enjoyed it a lot more than I let on in the beginning. I think, I definitely enjoyed it more than I let on in the beginning. I think it would make a great movie, honestly. Like,
really? Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
I would play up the early life would be the majority, a lot of it.
Wow.
Like the moon, the specific scene where he's talking to his uncle in the driveway and then the cops just pull up out of nowhere.
Right.
Like, that's a movie scene.
Oh, but wow. Look at that. We done went from I wasn't really feeling it to this could be a movie. Oh man.
It could.
That's crazy.
But, it was a good book though. It was definitely solid. I enjoyed it, and I think the only thing that I would have wanted more was a little bit of more specific money talk, a little bit more like specific investment strategies. But I understand in his position while he has to kind of keep it vague.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. Well, when they do the movie, we will watch the movie and review the movie and compare it to the movie. Right. Sean's gonna get it greenlit now, because he is a fan all of a sudden. I enjoyed the book. I did enjoy the book. I thought it was an easy read. I think if you are going to read this book, I think you should manage your expectations on what you'll get out of it. If you're looking for like a checklist of do 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you'll have a successful business, this really is not the book. Then we've reviewed other books that get real specific about what you need to do for your business and certain things like that. This isn't really it. This is more of it's a business book, but it's also like just a general overview of, hey, here's my path, here's my journey, here's what I do, here's what I did to get here, and I made money doing this, or certain principles and philosophies, but I'm not really going to give you investment advice. A little nuggets here and there that really you can find anywhere, but nothing super specific, like make sure the stock has this EPS ratio and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And I think it was an easy read. To me, it was an easy read. So easy, nice, just a little. It's good to hear, at least for me, it was good to read this story in the sense of like, not every story has to be a super struggle.
Right. That's why I like the most. That it wasn't granted, like he came from poverty, came from Jim Crow. It happened, but that's not the whole thing.
That's not the whole thing. And and so I appreciate that. I mean, and granted, struggle is a real aspect of life and a lot of people's lives and a lot of successful people's lives. So it's not to dismiss that, but it was good to kind of read a book about successful business person where it wasn't like struggle and finally pay off. So I did enjoy that part.
Yeah, same here.
Cool. All right, so I guess we are wrapped up giving our 2 cents on this book.
Yeah, I mean, I guess last question before we go: who should we cast as the star?
Oh man, we're gonna have to come back to that. I didn't know I came to do a book review. I didn't know I was doing casting calls now. But
next
time.
If
I'm gonna come across. I'm gonna send you some considerations next go round.
All right, sounds good.
You got any suggestions?
I don't know, Michael B. Jordan, Tony D. Vance. I don't know. It's just we gotta see.
You're just pulling all the leading black men in Hollywood right now. It sounds like from the list.
I gotta see who could pull off business strategist and moonshine getaway driver.
Oh, man. All right, get back to us on that, Sean. All right, so that's a wrap for this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed our review and thoughts on this book. Hopefully it provided you with some value and inspiration as you navigate through your business journey and life. As always, if you have a question you would like to answer on the show, shoot us a message on any of our social media channels. Also, don't forget to subscribe and share on Spotify and iTunes. See you again soon. In the meantime, keep grinding.
The Business Grind is for entertainment purposes. Opinions expressed are those solely of the host and guests. Please consult with a professional and exercise discretion before engaging in any business endeavors.
I'm out here on the grind. I'm out here on the grind.